So let's talk about the very last step in the entire customer service write-up process, or really in creating an exceptional service experience. And this last step is something that we in the industry see far too often as getting the car out of here. And that is vehicle delivery. It's when the customer comes to pick up their vehicle, of course. Customers see this very differently than we see it. You see, to us, the hard part's been done, right? Customer came in, we recognized customer type, we pegged the customer type, we gave them what they needed, we fulfilled those needs, we came out from behind the terminal, we engaged the customer, we used a customer problem analysis sheet maybe, we presented the multi-point inspection to them, we did the upsell, the technicians did an awesome job, diagnosing or upselling or checking the vehicle out, whatever it is they did, and the customer bought the work because we did a great job selling it, and all that work is now done. And so for us, this is the easy part. We just got to collect the money now. Get that car out of here. To a customer, however, this is the painful part. This is where they get separated from that pile of cash, if you will. So it's often seen as getting the vehicle out of here, and yet it can be the make or break point in the entire exceptional customer service experience. I'd like you to keep that in mind. So how should vehicle delivery go? First off, preprint the invoice. Preprint the invoice before the customer comes down to the shop to pick up their vehicle. It says, we're ready for you, we knew you were coming, we want to make this as fast and as efficient as possible, especially for Quadrant 1 customers. Now, once you get the invoice printed, explain to the customer in as much or as little detail as they need what work was performed. If it's me, I don't want to know anything. It drives me bananas if you sit there and you go through my invoice line by line. Why? Well, I am deep in Quadrant 1. I know what work I've asked you to do. My assumption is you've done it. You don't need to explain that invoice to me. As long as it matches my estimate, I'm good to go. Quadrant 3 customers, they're going to want every penny explained to them. Quadrant 2 and 4, yeah, they're going to want the bullet points. They're going to want to know, all right, this was for that was for this, etc., etc. So give them as much or as little detail about their invoice as they need. Now, I don't care who does this, but before that customer ever got down here and we ever got to the point of explaining the invoice, somebody had better have test driven that vehicle. Because if I go through that invoice with the customer and I let them know what we did to perform a maintenance or repair on their vehicle, and they go out and they get in that vehicle and they drive it down the road and they're doing the test drive for me, and something goes horribly awry, whether it's a fingerprint on the dash or a wheel falling off, doesn't matter to me. Somebody should have test driven that vehicle before the customer got into it. Always, always, always test drive these vehicles before the customer gets into it. Now, a couple other words of advice on vehicle delivery. Depending on where your shop's located, if you're in a metro area and some of you may not have a parking lot, or some of you may have a very small parking lot, and so the vehicle's parked on the street, if you can at all somehow deliver that vehicle to the door so the customer just has to walk out, get in their car, and drive off, that is a huge thing to the customer. It means a lot to the customer. Pretty big deal to the customer. If you're in snow country, so it's January, it's been snowing out, if the customer doesn't have to wade through the snow to get their vehicle, you can brush it off and bring it to the door with the heat already on, that means a lot to a customer. So think about that. If you're in the Sun Belt, think about having somebody deliver it to the door with the air conditioning on. They get into a nice cool car, it means a lot to the customer. It's these little things at the time of vehicle delivery that mean the world to the customer. Some of you may offer car washes. Some of you may just clean windshields as part of that delivery. Okay? But keep in mind those little things. And then something that's not so little that you really, really need to make sure you do, and that is perception of value. Because you may have explained the invoice, and you may have delivered the vehicle to the door for the customer, and you did a test drive, either a technician or somebody up here did a test drive, and everything's gone really, really well. Remember what we said about that money that you spent on a TV, and you got the TV home, you plugged in, you sat in your recliner and popped your beverage of choice and you started flipping channels, and you knew what you got for your money, but you take that same money and you pay the invoice with it, and you just bought 4 tires in alignment, and even though that vehicle was delivered to the door with the AC on and I drive off, the absolute best case is that I notice nothing. Worst case, I have a shimmy now. You, the service writer, have to create the perceived value at the time the customer is delivering or having the vehicle delivered to them. Create the perceived value. Explain to them again what they got for their money. Explain to them how it benefits them to have put those 4 tires on. That they've got a much safer vehicle. They've got better traction now. They've got better wet weather performance. Whatever it is. Explain to the customer the value in them giving you the money. Very, very important. So, to sum up vehicle delivery, the last step in creating an exceptional customer service experience. Preprint the invoice. Give them as much or as little information as they need to understand what they're giving you money for. Create perceived value. Remind the customer of the value of them paying this money for whatever work was done. Deliver the vehicle to the door if possible. And one last thing. If there's something that customer declined, something on the multi-point inspection form or something that was recommended, and they said, no, not today, I strongly encourage you to pre-schedule the appointment. Whether you're using an electronic system or a paper system, pre-schedule the next appointment. Even if it was an oil change, customers know roughly when they're going to be due again. You know, based on their service history, roughly when they're going to be due again. Ask if they can pre-schedule that appointment. Ask if they'd like to pre-schedule that appointment. Why? It keeps them from going anywhere else but your shop. It keeps them coming back to you. It doesn't allow anybody else to show them a better, a more exceptional customer service experience than what you provide. So pre-schedule appointments as the last step in that vehicle delivery. Excellent. We're going to move on to the next segment. We're going to talk about how to handle disgruntled customers. Because even though you might do everything right, you're still going to get disgruntled customers, aren't you? Stay tuned. So we've spent a significant amount of time talking about getting to the trust portion of the customer satisfaction pyramid. And we've talked a lot about the exceptional customer service experience, which most customers need to have in order to get to trust. What we haven't spoken of yet is the middle piece, the fixed right first time portion of the customer satisfaction pyramid. Because without fixed right first time, it doesn't matter what experience the customer has, they're not going to get to trust. So fixed right first time is a critical component to customer satisfaction, to getting to trust, so that we can increase our customer labor sales, so that we get the additional half hour of labor per repair order. Fixed right first time. Whose responsibility is it? Sounds like it's a technician's responsibility, doesn't it? The car is fixed. Well, they fix cars. Right, they better do it right the first time it comes in. I would suggest to you that fixed right first time is a responsibility of everybody in your organization. Everybody who engages the customer and who engages that vehicle has a responsibility to fix right first time. It can be a make or break for the customer, right? You can do everything right up here at the counter. The technician could do everything almost right. Customer comes up, they pay their invoice, they walk outside, they get in their car, and the problem's still there. Doesn't matter what you did to create an exceptional service experience at the base of that pyramid. You just toppled the entire pyramid. So let's talk about what you can do to create higher fixed right first time rates. Because it's a responsibility of everybody in your organization, that means it's your responsibility also. What exactly is the service writer's responsibility to fix right first time? Well, it's really in properly engaging the customer and gathering information from the customer. We talked about using a customer problem analysis sheet. You don't have to use it for every customer, but choose the opportunities to use it. Use it for drivability concerns. Use it for noise concerns. Use it for vibration concerns. Use it when the technician needs information in order to duplicate the concern. Technicians are taught from the very first day they became technicians. You don't perform a diagnosis or a repair unless you confirm the customer's complaint. If you can't confirm the complaint, don't put parts on that vehicle. They need information in order to confirm the customer's complaint. They need to know how the vehicle is being operated. That's your job, right? You gather that information from the customer. Well, what's the absolute best way of gathering that information? A test drive with the customer. Whether you're going to do it, if you have the personnel and you can leave the counter to go for the test drive, great. Or whether you have the technician go for the test drive with the customer, it's very, very important to understand what the customer's concern is. That communication piece between you and the customer is critical. Now, you've got the toughest job in the industry. I've always felt that way, and I continue to feel that way, because you have to translate. You have to translate what the customer says to you into something the technician can understand, and then you've got to translate what the technician says into something the customer can understand. And that's not an easy job, ever. There are some challenges with it. Use what tools you have available to yourself in your organization to gather that information and make that translation. For instance, when I was a technician, I had a service writer that was great. He had a great personality. He was very good at selling. But if I walked up to him and I asked him to call a customer and ask a customer a specific question, he would call the customer up, and I might have said, call the customer and ask if the sky is blue over their house. And he would walk back to my bay 5 minutes later and he would say, nope, they don't have rats in their basement. His translation of what I was asking was so poor, I could never get a good information as a technician from the customer. So one day I walk up to him and I said, hey, what if you just read this question to the customer? Read it word for word and then write down word for word what they say to you. And he looks at me and he says, what? I said, just read it to the customer. And he says, all I got to do is read it? Well, you know what his big challenge was? His big challenge was he thought he had to be something he wasn't. He thought he had to really understand my question and where I was going with it. And so he would try to translate what I was saying into what he thought I was saying and deliver that to the customer. Once he started just reading my questions and writing the answer down, we got along fantastically and we got some serious work done. So it was just a little bit of out-of-the-box thinking that got us to that point. But use the tools you have available. Use the personalities you have in your organization to try to improve that communication. Because gathering information is the first step in fixed right first time. You can't fix something you can't see. So your responsibility to fix right first time as a service writer is gathering information and ensuring the appropriate test drive with the customer takes place. Now, what's the technician's responsibility to fix right first time? I agree, they've got the majority of responsibility in this case. Their responsibility, to my way of thinking, and this is what I tell them, is verify the customer's complaint. Do whatever you have to do, talk to whoever you have to talk to, including the customer, to verify the customer's complaint. You can't fix what you can't see, right? After the complaint is verified, now the responsibility is in gathering the appropriate information for a proper diagnosis. I expect them to maintain the appropriate skill set required to diagnose and repair today's modern vehicles. That's not an easy task. Part of that is your organization's responsibility, certainly, to provide them some technical training, but it's also up to them to maintain their skills, to do their reading, to practice with their diagnostic tools, to keep their diagnostic tools in the appropriate condition so that they're getting accurate results during their diagnosis. I expect them to communicate with you as to potential challenges, potential problems, or questions they may have, information they may need in order to make a better or more accurate diagnosis. I expect them to perform a proper repair the proper way, in the proper manner, and I expect them to test drive the vehicle afterwards. So that's their responsibility to fix right first time. If everybody fulfills their responsibility to fix right first time, including both test drives, the before and after test drive, your fixed right first time scores will increase and you will get higher customer satisfaction because you just filled in that pyramid. You created the exceptional service experience, you added fixed right first time to it, and you got to trust, and that's where we want to be. Think about it. Fixed right first time. I challenge you right now to take the next 5 minutes and think about what you can implement in your organization in the next 30 days that can improve your fixed right first time. List what you need for human resources, for financial resources, for material resources. Think about what it is, what you can do, how you can do it, and how you're going to make sure it is done so consistently. Fixed right first time. Really important. When we come back, we'll talk about handling difficult customers. Stay tuned. We spent a lot of time talking about getting to trust on that customer satisfaction pyramid. And it began with an exceptional customer service experience, add to that fixed right first time and we get to trust, right? But we haven't talked about fixed right first time yet. We said earlier that sometimes you can just get to trust with fixed right first time. Some customers don't worry about the experience. But you can never get to trust without fixed right first time. It can make or break the entire experience for the customer. You can do everything right, from scheduling the appointment to the greeting to the write-up to the diagnosis and the upsell and the repair and the delivery. And if they drive off your lot and the problem still exists, you just blew up the whole experience for the customer, didn't you? So let's talk about what's involved with fixed right first time. Let's talk about whose responsibility it is to fix each vehicle right the first time. Now, it sounds like it's a technician's responsibility, right? Because fixed, well, they fix cars. Right, they should do it right. The first time sounds like it's just a repair thing. Well, I maintain that fixed right first time is the responsibility of everybody in your organization who engages the customer or engages the vehicle. Everybody's responsibility is fixed right first time. Specifically, what is the service writer's responsibility to fix right first time? Well, you begin the entire process, right? The work you do here at the counter allows the technician to do the best job possible. Your responsibility to fix right first time is communication with the customer and communication with the technician. Gathering the appropriate information from the customer, making sure that you have the full picture of what's going on, the full picture of what the customer's concern is before that customer leaves, so that the technician can do their job. Now, how you gather that information, whether you do it verbally, whether you do it in written form, whether you do it over the phone, that doesn't necessarily matter a whole lot to me as long as it's done appropriately. It's part of your customer engagement right here at the counter or on the phone. Use what tools you have available to your organization to make sure that goes as well as it possibly can. Use the customer problem analysis sheet. Fill it out with the customer. Fill it out with the customer over the phone. Have the customer fill it out if you're dealing with somebody else. Gather as much information as possible. Take that customer problem analysis sheet, whatever one you decide to use, and ask your technicians, is there something on there that they would like to see changed? Is there additional information that they would like included on it that would help them, maybe in your market? And modify it based on what they want. Because it's about getting the technicians the appropriate information so they can make an accurate diagnosis. Whether it's just writing it down on the repair order, that's okay too. But use your tools to gather that information. A really, really important tool, not to ever be overlooked, is a test drive with a customer. Whether you do the test drive yourself or whether you ask one of your technicians to do the test drive, that customer drives their vehicle every single day. They know how to make that problem manifest itself. See, you and I and the customer all drive differently. We could jump in one another's cars and it won't behave the same as when you're driving it or I'm driving it or they're driving it. Test drive with the customer. Doesn't matter to me personally whether you do it or whether the technician does it. Many service writers prefer the technician doing it because they know the questions to ask and they may know what they're looking for. But somebody should test drive with the customer. Do you have to do it all the time? No, you don't. You don't have to fill the customer problem analysis sheet all the time. All you got to do is pick the proper occasions in which to fill out the customer problem analysis sheet or go for a test drive. Do it for noise concerns. Do it for drivability concerns. Do it for vibration concerns. Or second repair attempts. And heaven forbid, definitely do it for third repair attempts. Okay, so test drive and gathering information is an absolute critical function of yours related to fixed right first time. Keep that in mind. Now, what's the technician's responsibility to fixed right first time? Yes, they have the major burden when it comes to fixed right first time. And there are significant expectations for technicians related to fixed right first time. The first expectation is that they confirm the customer's complaint. They are taught from day one, you do not do anything. No repair attempts, no parts on the vehicle, nothing, if you can't confirm the customer's complaint. I ask them in the training classes I conduct, please do what you have to do to confirm the customer's complaint. That includes asking you, the service writer, questions if they don't have enough information. That includes test driving with the customer if necessary. It may include calling the actual vehicle driver on the phone in case that wasn't the person that dropped it off. Confirm the customer's concern is top priority for technicians. Now, after that, I expect them to develop and maintain the appropriate skill set to diagnose and repair today's modern vehicles. Certainly, it's up to your organization to help provide them some technical training, to make the time available for them to do it, to maybe make the financial resources available to do it. But technicians will never learn enough in technical training classes to stay up to date. They've got to read, they've got to talk to other technicians, they've got to belong to technician networks. It's up to them to maintain the appropriate skill set to diagnose and repair today's vehicles. They also are expected to maintain their diagnostic equipment in an appropriate manner so that they get good results when they're using it. Bad results equal bad diagnosis. Assuming they do all that, they're expected to properly execute the repair. And part of proper repair execution is test driving to confirm the repair. They should always test drive the vehicle, especially with check engine lights. Here's a really, really important piece of information for all service writers, something that you here at the counter need to know. Have you ever had a customer leave your shop because you performed a repair? Say you performed an O2 sensor repair. You replaced an O2 sensor on a customer's vehicle due to a check engine light. And that customer was gone for 3, 4, 5, 10 days, and the next thing you know, they're coming back through that door, and they're now a disgruntled customer because that check engine light is still on. Well, let me explain this real quick. Something the technicians know that you need to know. That O2 sensor that tripped the check engine light also, at the same time, blocked a whole bunch of other tests from being run because the O2 sensor is used in a number of tests. Well, if the tester is bad, as in the O2 sensor is bad, no sense in running the other tests because you'll get bad results, right? Now, if that customer drove that vehicle for an extended period of time with the check engine light on and all these tests being blocked from running, as soon as you execute the proper diagnosis and repair on the O2 sensor, but didn't test drive the car in an appropriate manner, the customer takes their vehicle, they execute the proper test drive according to the check engine light, and all of a sudden all these other tests can run. And when these other tests run, because the O2 sensor is now good, they find other problems. They turn the check engine light back on. That's something that your customer should understand. When it comes to mill-on diagnosis, A, the technician should test drive the vehicle in an appropriate manner to make all these tests run so that they are assured that they find all the problems. I would rather have the technician tell me that the check engine light came back on a test drive than have the customer come back in and tell me the check engine light came back on. If the test drive doesn't show anything, you still need to inform the customer that this is the way the system works. There is a chance, because that light was on for so long, and now that you've repaired part of that system, that the other tests are going to run, and they might find other problems. So the technician's responsibility and your responsibilities overlap when it comes to fixed right first time. But the bookends of the whole process are the test drives. Understanding the customer complaint and verifying the repair. If you can do those consistently and make everything else happen in between, the information gathering and the technician's skill set with due diligence, your fixed right first time is going to be tremendous. And you will get to the top of that pyramid, the trust portion of the pyramid, which will allow us to increase revenues, increase profitability, and increase our customer satisfaction. Something to think about. In the next segment, we're going to talk about even if you do everything right, you still get some disgruntled, unhappy customers, and we'll discuss how to handle that. Stay tuned. Okay. Yes, sir. Yes, sir, I understand. Is everyone okay? That must have been frightening. We'll take care of everything. I'm going to provide you with a rental vehicle. As soon as I get you down here, I'm going to send a tow truck right now. So as soon as you arrive here, we'll put you in a rental vehicle, and we'll get to the bottom of this, and we'll rest assured that we will take care of you. Yes, sir. We'll see you soon. Thank you. Wheel fell off. Not a good scene. No matter whether you do everything right, You make the appointment, you greet the customer, you engage, you do the repair, you do everything right. You build the whole pyramid that we talked about. You create an exceptional experience. You fix it right the first time. Things happen. Things happen. You're always going to have some disgruntled customer. So let's talk about, first, what makes customers upset, and secondly, what you can do about it, how you handle a disgruntled customer. And I'll give you 3 things to use for every disgruntled customer that walks through your door. What makes customers upset? The biggest thing that makes customers upset, in my experience, is not feeling listened to. It usually is related to fixed right first time. They drop the vehicle off for service. It gets written up at the counter. Repairs get done. Maybe they get upsold too. And they drive the vehicle off the lot. And the problem still exists. And they don't feel like you ever listened to them. Or maybe you never confirmed their complaint. And you fixed what you thought their complaint was. And they get the vehicle home and they discover, no, that rattle's still there. The vibration is still there. Not feeling listened to is the #1 reason customers are upset. The #2 reason is the vehicle wasn't fixed right. You didn't get fixed right first time. And #3, their vehicle was altered in some manner. Like this gentleman on the phone, we had a wheel off situation. After it left here, we did an oil change and tire rotation, and he got about 10 miles down the road and the wheel dropped off. Everybody's okay. But it's not a situation that I enjoy handling. This gentleman, when he arrives, isn't going to be happy at all. How do I choose to handle that? Let me give you some advice on handling disgruntled customers. The first, and I think the biggest piece of advice, is don't talk. When he comes through that door, he's going to have an awful lot to say to me. And the last thing that gentleman wants to hear from my mouth is, I'm sorry. He's not looking for I'm sorry. First thing he's looking for is to vent. And I encourage you, when you get an angry customer in your store, let them vent. They're going to have a lot to say to you, and it may not be very nice. And the best thing you can do is zip your mouth and just take it. The storm will pass. At some point, they'll run out of steam, and they'll pause, and they'll take a deep breath, and they'll probably make a second run at you. And that's okay. You just actively listen to them. Get out from behind the terminal. Look them in the eye. Take what they can dish out. Okay? That second run, you'll pause eventually. Sometimes they'll make a third run. Usually they won't. If they do make a third run at you, it's usually pretty short. Make sure that pause is long enough that they've had a chance to say what they want to say. They need to get it out. Don't interrupt. Never say you're sorry. The second step, first is listening. Second step is empathy. Express empathy. Empathy is very, very different than sympathy. Very different. It feels different, it sounds different. Think about this. If that was your vehicle, that wheel just fell off, and you call me up on that phone, and you say, my wheel just fell off, and I say, I'm sorry about that, or, gee, I'm sorry. What does that feel like to you? Does that feel like anything to you? It feels kind of empty, doesn't it? You see, I've got a theory about I'm sorry. And I've got 3 kids at home, and watching these 3 kids, I've developed this hypothesis about why sorry just doesn't work in our world anymore. The 4-year-old grabs the whack-a-mole mallet, and she marches into the living room where the 8 and 10-year-old are watching TV. And she whacks the 8-year-old over the head with a whack-a-mole mallet, right? The 8-year-old jumps off the couch, goes running and screaming to Mommy, and says, Mommy, she hit me over the head. So what do you do with the 4-year-old? You send her back in to apologize to the 8-year-old. So she goes walking back in, she stomps her foot, she looks at him, and she says, sorry, and goes stomping out. What did the 8-year-old learn? All he learned was that you say sorry even though you're not. Because is she sorry? No, she's not sorry. And so I think we're conditioned at a really young age to know that sorry just doesn't mean what it's supposed to mean anymore. Empathy is very, very different. If your wheel falls off and I say to you, oh my goodness, that must have been frightening. Is everybody okay? That feels very, very different, doesn't it? Very different than, sorry about that. So express empathy. Listen, let them vent. Don't say a word. And when it's your turn to speak, express empathy. Empathy can oftentimes just make the whole situation come down to a point where you can actually have the conversation. You're trying to get the customer to a point where you can have a reasonable conversation with that individual. And then the third piece is say what you're going to do. Action. Listen, empathy, action. They don't want hesitation. They don't want indecision at that point. They want to know what you're going to do. They've got a problem. They want to know what you're going to do. Make a decision. Now, it'll work every time for you. You'll at least get to the point where you can have the conversation. How you handle it from there can be a little bit tricky. In our seminar series, we use a lot of role plays. And we use very structured role plays with significant scenarios that have happened to all of us to talk about what options we have for handling these situations. Now, it's difficult to do that in the video environment, but let me suggest this to you. When you provide action to that customer, there are situations that you're not going to be able to resolve. Customer comes to you and they say, my wheel fell off after you serviced my vehicle. It's at my guy's garage. You're not touching it. Well, what do? You're never going to win that argument. You're not going to be able to get that vehicle back to your shop. So what do? You say, okay, I'll be more than happy to reimburse you. Do you mind if I call that shop and get their opinion on what happened with the vehicle? Because you as a shop, no matter what the situation is, no matter whether you can win the argument or not, whether it cost you a lot of money or not, you need to find out what happened so that you can resolve it. Because you don't want that same practice happening again and again and again. So you call the other shop in this scenario, and they're going to more than likely say, come on down, take a look at it with us, because they've been in that same situation too. Now, is that enough? Say we've refunded that customer his money. When this gentleman gets here on the tow truck, I will of course put him in a rental vehicle. I will of course pay for the tow, and I will pay to repair his vehicle, and I am going to reimburse him for the service that we provided him this morning. But is that enough? It's not. For some of you, you're saying, yeah, I've gone overboard. I paid for the rental, I paid for the tow, I made the situation right. But making the situation right is not enough. When I was a factory rep for a major manufacturer, and we went into a lemon law case, I would rather lose that lemon law case than win it. Why? Because if we lost that lemon law case, that customer was awarded another one of our vehicles. They stayed in one of our vehicles. If we won the lemon law case, we walk away patting ourselves on the back, what's that customer do? They drive to a different manufacturer and they buy a different vehicle, and we lost the customer. You can reimburse the customer for the service, you can pay for the tow, you can pay for the rental vehicle to address their inconvenience, but you need them to come back to you. You need to give them a reason to come back to this shop, because they're upset enough right now, they're never gonna. I suggest a free oil change. You don't have to give away the store. Give them a free oil change. What do oil changes cost you? In reality, you the shop. Not a whole lot, right? It's short labor. Parts don't cost you much. What does it mean to the customer? It could mean $35 to $90 to a customer, and it's something they have to do, and they know they have to do it. Eventually, this individual will calm down. Whether he comes back here or not with that free oil change card, he may give it to his son, he may give it to his neighbor, he may give it to somebody at work. Either way, somebody's going to get a free oil change at this shop. And that means I get to keep a customer. Whether it's this gentleman or another customer, I get a shot at showing this customer that we do good work here, that we can take care of them. Yeah, I got to build that whole pyramid again. But the point here is that I made the situation right, and I gave them a reason to come back. Always give disgruntled customers a reason to come back. So when they come to you and they're upset and they're blowing off steam, listen, empathy, action, and give them a reason to come back. Now, one last thing to say about disgruntled customers. Where do you draw the line? Someday you're going to have a customer that's so upset they're going to cross some lines. Whether it be with language, whether it be with actions, you need to think ahead of time. how you're going to handle that situation. We all have a different line to draw. For me, it's language. I'll put up with a lot of language unless it's in my waiting room. If it's in my waiting room, I ask that customer to step outside. I inform the customer, I want to have this conversation with you. I'd like to do it either in my office or outside. Now, if they want an audience and they want to keep going, at some point I will say to them, sir, if you're going to continue to use this language, or ma'am, if you're going to continue to use this language, this conversation is going to have to end. I'll give them a warning. If they continue with it, I'll give them one more warning. And I will say to them, I'm going to walk away if you continue to use that language. I want to have this conversation with you, but I cannot have this conversation with you like this. And if they do it the third time, I will walk away. Usually they'll stop at that point. Only you know where your line is. But think about where that line is and think about how you're going to handle it when they get there. Give them a chance, but don't give them too many chances. And try to keep them away from your people in the waiting room. You don't want other customers hearing all this. Okay? So be prepared. Listen, empathy, action. Give them a reason to come back. And that will work for you. Practice it. Role play it. Attend a seminar. And keep up the great work. We'll see you soon. So in this segment, I want to kind of wrap everything up with something I think is really, really important to every shop operation, and that is shop meetings. I ask my seminar groups, who in this room, and usually there are 40, 45 people in the room, who in this room currently have shop meetings? And if I'm lucky, I get one or two hands go up. I ask the same thing of technicians, and I get a lot of eyes rolling, right? We all have an aversion to shop meetings, and yeah, there's good reasons for it. We've all sat in shop meetings that were just brutal. Shop meetings are a key component to every successfully operated repair shop because technicians think very differently than service writers think. In-shop ownership can think very differently than service writers and technicians. You all have to communicate together. Shop meetings do a number of things for you. They can keep little things from becoming big things. You can address things immediately rather than letting them fester or rather than letting them cause customer satisfaction issues. It's a communication tool, but there's rules to shop meetings. And the first rule, number one rule, is keep it short. 15, 20 minutes maximum. Keep it short. Nobody likes long meetings. And nobody likes to come in early for a meeting or stay late for a meeting or lose their lunch hour over a meeting. If you keep your meetings to 15 to 20 minutes, you can usually fit them in between your normal hours of operation. That's rule number one, short. Rule number two, have an agenda. I ask my groups, what happens if you don't have an agenda? And this is the only thing that technicians and service writers I've ever seen them agree on. They all say the same thing. It turns into let's say a complaint session. If you don't have an agenda, it's a free-for-all, right? So you've got to have an agenda. I usually have 3 things on the agenda. And I don't really care what those 3 things are, but I want at least one of those 3 things to be communication within the shop. Whether we're using customer problem analysis sheets, whether we're going on test drives, whether we're collecting appropriate information for the technicians to do their job, I want some sort of communication item on the agenda. I want some sort of tool and equipment or facility thing on the agenda. And the third thing, I usually let it be whatever. Maybe it's the number of comebacks that week. Maybe it's everybody did a great job. You see, you should have positives on that agenda as well as negatives. Positives will get you so much further than sitting in a meeting telling everybody how horrible they are. Recognize people in those shop meetings. So keep it short, have an agenda, and be consistent with it. Consistency is key in everything, right? Especially in business. A consistent shop meeting, whether it be weekly, monthly, quarterly, doesn't matter as long as it's consistent. Sends a very specific message. It sends the message that we at this repair shop are serious about what we do here. We're serious about communicating. We're serious about keeping everybody on the same page in terms of customer satisfaction, customer retention, customer labor sales, etc. So, short, agenda, consistent. If you do those three things with your shop meetings, you're going to drastically improve communication within your organization. I suggest if anybody wants to start having shop meetings, that you create 12 months worth of agendas, or just do it quarterly to start with and create 4 quarters worth of agendas. You can do it ahead of time. That's fine. You can pick the dates ahead of time. That's okay too. If the agenda changes between now and when you get to the second quarter, third quarter, fourth quarter agenda, that's okay. But at least you've got a plan in place and everybody can see, you know what, we're serious about this. So I strongly urge you to consider having regular shop meetings to improve communication, improve customer labor sales, and improve overall customer satisfaction. It will help you create the exceptional service experience, including fixed right first time, and get to trust. Thank you. Stay tuned. We've put forward an awful lot of ideas in this program. There's a few things I'd like to say before we close it out. All of these ideas that you've been exposed to, think about them for a little bit. Explore them. Review this DVD one segment at a time, whatever segment interests you. Review it. Think about how you might be able to implement whatever process it is. Think about what you need for materials, people resources, financial resources, and have a conversation about it back at your shop. Maybe you all get together and watch the segment of the DVD and have a conversation. It really is about building trust with your customers. Because if you can build trust with your customers, sales will come, money will follow, increases in customer labor sales and revenue and profitability, they'll all be there. Think about what you can do to create that customer satisfaction pyramid. Now, of all of these ideas and any other ideas that you may come up with now and into the future, think about how you may implement them. But be aware of this. Whenever we implement process change, things happen. Humans don't generally like change. And so no matter what change that you're going to implement in your organization, you're going to notice that your current productivity or efficiency or customer satisfaction may drop. That's okay. It's expected. You've changed. Everybody's getting used to the new changes. They're not doing what they used to do. And they're not going to do the new thing as well as maybe they did the old whatever it was. So bear with it. Stick with it. Eventually it will bottom out. Along the way you'll have naysayers. There'll be somebody in your organization that will say, I told you we shouldn't have done it. I knew it wasn't a good idea. We need to go back to the old way of doing it. Just ignore it. Take it for what it is. Stick with the new process because eventually you will bottom out and then you'll start to rise and productivity will increase, efficiency will increase, and you'll be back to where you were before. And then you'll begin to rise above and you'll begin to realize your new vision for your organization. And that's how change happens. But you've got to give it time. Don't implement something and say within 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, this isn't working, let's blow it up and try something new. No, you've got to give it a long enough time. Whether it's 6 weeks, 8 weeks, 12 weeks, give it a chance to work. Never stop exploring, never stop challenging yourself, and never stop seeking new ideas. Thank you for watching. So we've talked about an awful lot of ideas in this program. And before we end, I'd like to say a few more things to you. Of all of these ideas, I encourage you to remember that these are industry best practices. These were all somebody else's ideas. They weren't our ideas. We just collected them together in one place. Somebody thought of these things, somebody implemented them, modified them, massaged them, made them fit their organization. It's now your turn to take these ideas and fit them to your organization. Make them work for you. Use them to create that trust. Use them to create that customer satisfaction pyramid. Create an exceptional service experience for your customers. Increase fixed right first time at your facility, and you will get to trust. Once you get to trust, you will have increases in customer satisfaction, you will have increases in customer retention, and you will have increased profitability, revenue, labor sales. The money will follow. So create that customer satisfaction. Now, be aware that whenever you implement any change, no matter what it is, no matter how big or how small it is, some crazy things may happen. And it happens with every organization. But it's important that you be aware of that before you go and implement change. So here's what you see happen. You go into your organization and you say, all right, we're going to change the way we do this, or we're going to add this to our process. And somebody in the organization will usually say, oh, that isn't going to work. I like the way we're doing it. The way we do it is good. So your productivity or your efficiency or your customer satisfaction is here. And you'll see it start to drop. Well, it drops because everybody in the organization is doing something new. They don't necessarily know what they're doing. The processes aren't fine-tuned yet. They're not confident with what they're doing. And you'll see all this stuff drop. Well, those naysayers that started out saying this isn't going to work are going to get really loud during that process, right? They're going to say, I told you so. I knew this wasn't going to work. I knew it was a bad idea, and they wouldn't listen to me. Just don't be discouraged by that, okay? Bear with it, because that drop will eventually bottom out. And when that drop bottoms out, there's only one place to go. And you'll see that productivity, efficiency, etc. start to rise. And you'll get back to the point where you originally were. And then you'll start to see gains. And you'll start to see your new visions realized. They call it the J-curve of change. Keep it in mind. Remember, it's going to happen. It happens to every organization. Give it time to work. Don't implement a new process or procedure or idea and 2 weeks into it go, you know what, you're right, this doesn't work. Give it 4 weeks, 8 weeks, 10 weeks, 12 weeks. Give it a good chunk of time to work. Don't be afraid to change things, but only change things after you're absolutely positive they're not working. Develop your own ideas. Always explore, always reach for the stars, search for a new way of doing it. Look outside the automotive business. There are tons of ideas out there. We at AAT Incorporated sincerely hope that you got something out of this program. We sincerely hope that your customer satisfaction will improve because of what you learned here, that your profitability will improve because of some idea that you developed while watching this program, and we sincerely hope that your work life got a little bit more enjoyable. We always welcome your comments. You can reach us through our website at intelligentmechanic.com. Share this program with your coworkers, discuss the ideas, and keep reaching for the stars. Thank you for watching. So throughout this program, we've talked about an awful lot of ideas. And hopefully, somewhere along the way, they triggered one of your own ideas, or you connected to one of these best practices in some manner, and you've thought about how you're going to implement them in your own organization. You see, this was all made up by somebody. Somebody invented these ideas. Somebody tried it in their own business. Somebody modified it and massaged it and made it work for them. It's your turn now to take these best practices and make them work within your facility. Make them yours. Modify them however you see fit and try them. There's a few things I'd like to say about implementing change, however, because implementing change is rarely ever easy. You see, what happens oftentimes is you go to implement a change, a new process, a new idea, whatever it may be, and you're always going to have some naysayer in the organization say, well, I don't like that idea, or I like the old way, or the old way worked really well. And when you implement the change, your productivity was here, or your efficiency or customer satisfaction was all right here. And then it begins to drop. Whatever it is you're measuring, whatever metric it is you're trying to improve begins to drop. And along that drop, those naysayers' voices get really loud, right? And they start saying, I told you so. I knew this wouldn't work. If they'd only listened to me. Look at all the time we're wasting. Look at this. This isn't working. Bear with it. Don't be discouraged. Because eventually that drop is going to bottom out. And once it bottoms out, there's only one place to go, isn't there? And it's going to start climbing. And eventually you're going to get to the point where you were before you implemented the change. And at that point, you'll start to see increases. You'll start to see your visions realized. And you'll get to where your goal wanted to be. They call it the J-curve of change. Don't be discouraged when you see that drop. Know that it's normal. Every organization goes through it. Just hang in there. Give it time to work. Don't implement a change and in the first 2 weeks you see a drop, bail out of it and say, yeah, you're right, this didn't work. Stick with it. Give it some time. Give it 8 weeks, 10 weeks, 12 weeks. Give it a significant amount of time. It's okay to massage it and fine-tune it along the way as long as you know that your fine-tuning or your massaging is leading you in the right direction. Don't make big changes unless you absolutely can see that they're getting in the way of that positive change. So take these ideas, make them yours. Take this program and share it with your coworkers. Take this program and take segments from it and show a 5-minute or a 10-minute segment to your coworkers and then have a discussion. Bring it to work and say, hey, I saw this idea, you watch it, tell me what you think, and come up with your own ideas. You don't have to use exactly what's in this entire program. But remember, the big goal is to get to trust. If you can get to trust, you will increase customer satisfaction, you will increase customer retention, and with those increases, the money will follow. You will realize increased customer labor, you will realize increases in profitability, and you will realize increases in revenue. So implement change with an eye towards customer satisfaction. Take these ideas, make them yours. We at AAT Incorporated really sincerely hope that you found something of value in this program. And we know that if you take some of these ideas and you implement them, you will see increases in your customer satisfaction, your profitability, and you'll make your work life a little bit more enjoyable. We always enjoy hearing from you. You can reach us through our website at intelligentmechanic.com. I'm Greg Marchand, President of AAT Incorporated. Thank you for watching.